Welcome! Today we are foolishly discussing ways to improve the smart gun. Disclaimer before we start, I think the smart gun is a great concept. It kept me coming back to the game far more than the Season 1 rewards did. The gun is already a success story in my mind, and I also want to acknowledge the people that have done the hard work of bringing this gun to life. I'm sure it was a huge amount of effort that has been put in to provide us with the smart rifle we have. When I see negative comments on the forums, I really feel for the people who made it. This video we're going to be examining the rough edges and naively seeing if we can provide insight to try and help. I hope this video is taken with that spirit in mind. If not, it will probably just be a good laugh seeing how crazy my ideas are anyway. So let's get into it. I just have a quick section here on quality of life features, and this is around how you visualize the lock-ons. I find that this bar isn't really big enough, and then the actual numbers when you have the lock-ons, it's just not clear enough when you have max locks, in my opinion. For me, this becomes even more of an issue when you don't actually have enough ammo in your magazine for your locks. This red line at the top, it's not enough of an indicator to show that you don't have enough ammo. Now you can mess around with some of these options with the user interface, but regarding the smart rifle, I think it could actually do with its own section in the user interface to be able to manipulate these individual sizes for your own personal taste. Personally, I think it'd be handy to also go over to the audio queue, so in the audio menu, to actually be able to tick, do I want an audio queue if I'm at max locks, or if I don't have enough ammo, and to be able to adjust that volume of those different options as well. I think whilst I'm here, it'd be amazing if you also had born ready, dash, anything else that would be handy to have in this audio menu as well. To understand my rationale for a total ammo increase, we're going to look at the base gun with no gear mods, and we're going to compare this to the base gun of the Stubby and the Warthog also. Looking at this top chart, we can see that actually the smart rifle performs pretty well considering if we look at this damage potential. So this is our base ammo times the amount of damage that we can do per bullet, and that's our damage potential. The Stubby obviously has an increase on this because it's got that 20% chance to apply electrocution, so that damage potential is higher than the numbers we have here. Obviously the biggest issue we're going to have is that 216 base ammo and only 6 magazines. But nobody uses the base gun. We obviously all going to put gear modifications on, and this is where these numbers change. Going over to the middle chart here, we can see that the problem with the smart rifle is we only have either an ammo or a damage option. So if we take the ammo option, it brings us up to a potential of 6,048. With the Stubby, it's quite a simple choice to take one ammo upgrade and one damage upgrade on the gear modifications chart. This now brings us to a damage potential above the smart rifle, and that's not even factoring in that electrocution damage. If we now bring in this bottom chart, if we take damage instead, it actually lowers our damage potential, obviously giving us that extra burst damage, but our damage potential is still well below the Stubby here, especially if you factor in that electrocution damage. We haven't even considered how much ammo we were going to get from a resupply, which over the course of an elite deep dive or even just multiple resupplies is going to tally up to quite a bit as well. This is why I'm recommending a staggering 72 ammo, that is 2 entire magazines added to the smart rifle. Now I know you might be thinking, but I voted for number 2 for just 36 ammo, but that was in December. I've played the gun a lot more and I've done my overclock analysis now, and I've really had a play of all of those different overclocks, and this is why I think the gun needs this amount of ammo. Now if we look at the base gun options, it seems crazy to give it plus 72. We go up to 6,000 damage potential, way ahead of the Stubby, even if we include that electrocution damage. But, as I say, nobody plays the gun with the base gun. Everyone's going to be playing with probably at least one ammo upgrade, one damage upgrade. And then when we factor this in, it doesn't look that bad, let alone if we consider the crowd control that the Stubby can achieve as well. This clip is with 50% chance to electrocute and 25% chance to spread that electrocution to nearby targets. And you can see how many 2.5s we've got going on up here. Over the course of a whole map or an elite deep dive, this is a staggering amount of damage to include on top of the Stubby, let alone the benefit of having that slow as well, helping yourself and your allies. I think factoring all of this in, the fact that the smart rifle is still going to have less ammo when you resupply, you're still going to burn through it quicker, yes you're going to have that higher burst DPS, and also the fact that I think through my extensive playtime with the smart rifle, I think that the percentage of ammo that you're going to lose by curving into walls or into armour is actually going to be higher than the developers probably initially thought. I think it's probably closer to 15 to 20% of your total ammo, whereas maybe with bad aiming you're looking at 30 to 35%. I think it's not as much of a difference as people think. Jumping ahead to a sneak peek of the overclock section near the end of the video, the Executioner and the ECR are going to get ammo nerfs or bigger ammo nerfs, so they're going to gain a smaller proportion of the ammo gain as opposed to the other overclocks. This is going to make the other overclocks more viable, so it's not so much of a big issue having that 27 damage instead of 40.5. This lock-on section is going to be pretty quick. I think people find it difficult to apply the lock-ons. It's already a bit awkward when you've got grunts up close and you move around and things go behind terrain. Let's just reduce that lock-on speed. I'm suggesting 25%, so effectively make the new 100% effectively what 75% would be as it is now, and I think it's just going to make it feel a little bit more snappier, a little bit more responsive, and I think that's going to help new players and of course current players as well using the smart rifle. Looking at our gear modifications now, and we have at tier 2 our lens options. Now I'm in two minds of this. There's obviously a conservative option, which is basically just to leave these all exactly as they are now. I actually find more often than not the wider scanning area is actually a detriment when you're trying to take on the hordes rather than a benefit, targeting units in the background rather than the ones you want up close, just like we can see here, this one right in the background consuming one of our locks. Going over to macro lens, it can actually make it easier to target the hordes and to focus down what you want to go on, or apply electrocution if you've got the electric generator mod, or piercing rounds. And this user on the forums is saying exactly that. They find it hard to focus a single target because the lock-on goes all over the place. And whenever they want to clear grunts, it shoots too many bullets and wastes ammo. What they're saying is it's locked onto too many targets they don't want to focus. The user's post is a similar story to when I first picked up the smart rifle as well. Using it with the wider firing angle, it just didn't feel that nice to play. I then tried the macro lens, and after already playing with a wider angle, the macro lens felt terrible to try and use and to lock onto anything. So I went back to the wider firing angle, but then I just didn't feel like I could achieve anything with the gun, and then straight away the smart rifle was just put on the shelf and I thought it was just a rubbish gun. It is this potential player journey and the issues with the wider scanning area that my non-conservative option is actually to apply macro lens as the default scanning area for the smart rifle. This then puts it up to a lock-on range of 50 and also makes the crosshair size similar to what players would have been using already in the game. Changes to the scanning area and range are going to be put onto specific overclocks in which their playstyle has been thought out and designed into them, where a different scanning area makes sense. Now this potentially gives us an entire tier that we can play with. Now we could do something conservative and boring, such as more ammo, faster reload, faster fire rate, but I have a different idea. The smart targeting gear mod is a fantastic concept, and I really love where the developers were coming from it. Unfortunately, it runs into issues when we consider certain gear modifications on the gun or overclocks. It's counterintuitive for a lot of what we actually want to achieve with the gun. These three concepts I came up with, and they could potentially replace the smart software targeting. We have utility, close range, and the big game, the bigger threats. This is building us towards 3 different playstyles for the smart rifle and 3 different builds to start us off with before we even contemplate including overclocks. My initial thought was that the tier 2 options could all be replaced with these different versions of the smart targeting software. But I didn't want to have a potential situation where somebody might not want to take a single upgrade on tier 2. Potentially none of these targeting softwares would actually fit into the playstyle, especially if you were trying a different build or trying to do something different with an overclock. This is why I think potentially dropping the big game software and instead also having a generic option which could be just a basic upgrade that you might take if you don't like the other options. This now leaves us a gap at tier 3 where smart targeting software is, and I'm suggesting replacing it with fear, or at least a different version of fear, rather than one which requires full locks, one that instead applies a certain amount of fear chance based on the amount of bullets. So it's still good at dealing with hordes, and potentially, say, a Praetorian that you lock onto with quite a few target locks as well. This provides multiple different options towards a utility build or a horde build. It does kind of compete with piercing rounds, but it's different, and that provides player choice depending on the playstyle that they want to do and the build that they are choosing to go for. Much like the scanning area issues, I think whether you have more or less locks can confuse newer players. Often people wanting to put more locks on, but then feeling the gun just doesn't function very well. I personally feel it makes more sense to put these onto the overclocks. They might have specific play styles and it's going to fit in there, and it's going to make a bit more sense when the players actually get round to trying those overclocks with that play style in mind. This then makes sorting out tier 4 for me really easy. We simply move electric generator mod and unstable lock mechanism to tier 4 so that we can now start playing around with our tier 5 options. For tier 5, we're going to throw conservative out of the window because it's tier 5 and tier 5 is supposed to be for cool upgrades. So the first thing is Neuro Lasso. I think it's an interesting overclock. I just don't think it's good enough to be its own overclock. It feels more like a tier 5 upgrade for me, and I'm thinking some kind of modified version which isn't too overpowered moves into tier 5. Next up, we have some turret integration. Many people lament the fact that the smart rifle doesn't have any kind of turret interaction. This might not be the right option. It's quite a passive upgrade that I've put forward here, but it does give people who want to really have a little bonus to those sentry guns, they have an option that they can still do. This last option I'm not entirely sold on. For me, it resolves an issue that the smart rifle has of when you're trying to apply locks but you don't have enough ammo in the magazine. I have an absolutely insane idea of how to resolve this at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. But this can potentially resolve our issue when we say have executioner. We want to ensure we have 8 locks but we've only got 5 or 6 bullets left in the magazine. This will load those bullets, albeit at a slower rate, and apply those locks at a slower rate, but we can still have the option to fire. Now, I would think this would need some kind of audio cue, either so you know it is happening, or you can see, oh actually I've only got 1 or 2 bullets in the magazine, it's going to be quicker for me just to manually reload. So this is what our final gear mods look like. Now, if we think about a build of this, say a single target build, obviously we've got damage or ammo at tier 1, both potential options. We'd probably want to go with the 15% quicker lock-on rather than the close range or utility because we want no single target damage. And now here at tier 3, again, it stays the same as before. Blow through or potentially the ECR if you want to back it up with fire damage to try and get that extra 20% damage, still stays the same. And then at tier 4, probably exactly like you have now, unstable lock mechanism for that guaranteed plus 20% extra damage, or if you're taking that ECR at tier 3, you move over to having the electric generator mod. And we have some interesting options at rank 5. The auto reload could be handy, or potentially you want to slow down those bigger targets to make it easier to hit their weak points, or because you're not going to be focusing the hordes, you want to increase the damage of your sentry guns to better deal with them. All are valid options. Turning our focus to a horde or utility build now, and you're probably going to want to take ammo at rank 1, but you don't have to. With that extra ammo, potentially if you want to deal with the hordes, you want better DPS when they're at close range, potentially you want to take the damage. And now we obviously have the choice between maybe close range or taking that utility targeting software, so you're going to guarantee 3 locks for that electric generator mod, or you have the option, if you don't really like either of those playstyles, just going to the smarter targeting for 15% faster lock on. Again, you have the chance of fear or blow through, depending on whether you want to be more utility based or dealing with the hordes. You're probably going to want to take electric generator mod at rank 4, and then you have all these different options at rank 5, so potentially the Neuro Lasso version or the sentry gun option. This also comes into the fact that now we could potentially think about having proximity grenades, building a fortress with the use of fear and a Neuro Lasso. Neuro Lasso applying that slow whilst you lock on, and then potentially fearing them after you fire. Even without the overclocks, we've got 3 clear paths here to build the gun, and also wriggle room for players to, diversify, try different builds based on their own play style and how they want to play the game. Moving on to our overclocks now, and just like my overclock analysis, I've put these into 3 different categories: single, hybrid and hordes, and we're trying to split this evenly between them, obviously with wriggle room for different builds to be used in different ways. Starting off with my personal favourite, the Executioner. Not many changes here. First thing, it's going from red to yellow. This is because it doesn't change the gameplay of the gun that much. So we're sticking with everything exactly the same. We're losing the very fast lock acquisition because the base gun has already gone down to 75%. So we're only 25% away from Executioner anyway. And we have that option of an extra 15%. So if you take that, the Executioner is going to lose 5% lock-on speed. So it's about the same anyway. The major thing we've got here is instead of minus 12 ammo, we're going to minus 48 ammo. And this is to compensate for that plus 72 on the base gun. So it's actually only going to be one additional magazine for Executioner. That's plus 24. And this is because it deals so much damage, you're still going to have to manage it, especially if you're going to take damage at tier 1. It needs to have a downside. Armor Break module is completely losing its gimmick because for me it's just too close to the Seeker rounds. What we've got here is just a small damage boost and a slightly faster reload. So effectively this is the green version of Executioner. You could take it for single target damage focus, or you can build it to help deal with the hordes, or obviously as a hybrid option. Now I have a bit of a wild change for Seeker rounds, so bear with me as I explain it. It functions basically exactly the same, apart from the fact that you can lock on and target through walls. So you're not going to be able to see through the walls, you'll just be able to apply the scan in, move around, and then all of a sudden it will start applying locks, and then because the Seeker rounds can obviously shoot through walls, you can then release and deal your burst damage. Now I feel this Overclock needs something different. It's a kind of different playstyle that some people might enjoy, so that gimmick gives itself a different role, different identity. Executioner deals more damage, but Seeker has got this kind of utility. You might be able to help out your team, you might be able to apply damage where Executioner wouldn't be able to deal its damage, even with that slower burst rate of fire. Now I've reduced its range to 30 instead of 50 because we've got macro lens on the base gun. This is just to stop you being able to abuse it as much. It might even need to go down to 25 if this gimmick was going to be implemented. Moving on to more of our hybrid and horde killing side, and we've got explosive chemical rounds, and this is going to be quite controversial. I've put it so it has a maximum locks of 3 per target, and I kind of think of it as like the Die Hard with Samuel Jackson, where you've got the 2 different chemicals which mix and then you get the explosion. So the first bullet causes the hole, the second bullet then puts 1 chemical in, the third bullet then applies the second chemical, and you get the explosion. Now ECR is turned to red because obviously this maximum lock of 3 per target drastically changes the gun and the playstyle around it. Now to put up with this increased efficiency of having this maximum locks and guaranteeing that you're getting that damage each time, rather than the annoyance of potentially not getting the locks, wasting ammo, and that kind of annoying little mini game, we've got a minus 72 ammo instead of minus 36. So you're only going to get plus 36 from that plus 72 that we started with on the base gun, so effectively 1 extra magazine. Now depending how this would work, that might even need to go lower depending how efficient that 3 locks per target is. One additional thing, I think this would definitely need an audio cue to tell you that, there's only 3 targets on the screen, you've applied your 9 locks, you've still got 3 locks you can apply, but there's nothing on the screen to apply, so it sort of goes, fire your gun, you've got your max locks. Like I say, this is controversial, but for me, the ECR is just so annoying when you don't get those locks and you're wasting ammo. Eraser moves into our green version of ECR, or potentially hybrid for hordes, hybrid for utility, so it's basically exactly the same, more targets. I've put the slightly larger scanning area because obviously we don't have that option as a tier upgrade, and because it applies more locks, just a little bit of a lock-on speed bonus as well. And finally we have the replacement for Neural SO, and this is purely in the horde category, potentially a bill of utility as well. So here we've got a massive damage reduction, but we've got a much larger scanning area, we've increased the amount of locks, and we fire radiated shots. So that would apply the glow, which assists our teammates in being able to see the targets a bit easier, and the damage over time. If the radiate is more of an issue, it could just be replaced with ignite, so you'd set them on fire. The point is here that we might not apply our locks super fast, but we can just apply our locks to the entire screen and just get that damage over time going on all of them, just mass horde clearing. Before we go over my absolutely last and final insane idea for the smart rifle, I just want to say that my next big video is going to be about how you can become a Mystic Dwarf and know exactly what is going to be coming up in the future, especially whether you're going to be killed by a bulk detonator or not. With this knowledge, you will know what is in the spawn pool, what can actually invade your game, so stay tuned. Right from the start of using the smart rifle, I always felt it should have been a heat limited gun rather than magazine ammo, and this is because when you try to apply those locks but you don't have enough ammo left in the magazine, it feels really silly and counterintuitive. I think it potentially would have made more sense to be a laser using mirrors to help curve these shots round into weak points. This then could have left room for guns which deal more damage generating more heat, or guns which wipe out more of the horde reducing, or if you overheat it impacts your turrets, maybe they fire ignited shots whilst overheating. There would have been a lot of different potential there, but as I say, this is an insane idea, it's not going to happen now. It would have been interesting and a different thought concept, but I really love where the smart rifle is, and I just hope it can have a little few tweaks in the future. I really enjoy using it, and I hope it can only improve more in the future. Thank you so much for watching, I'll see you next time.